another episode of Getting Off the Hamster Wheel, how to find a career that brings you joy, fulfillment, and success. My name is Karen Weeks, and today we have Julia Wuench joining us to share her story about how she went from the corporate world to social impact consulting. And now she is a coach with a mission to enhance human connection and fulfillment at work and in life. So let's jump in and hear Julia's story. Hi, everybody. We are so excited to have Julia with us today. Welcome, Julia. So if you could give us sort of an overview of your career and your story, we'd love to hear that, and we'll go deeper after that.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me, Karen. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a fan of the podcast and would love to provide an overview. I began my career actually in healthcare corporate finance. And I consider myself someone who's had three careers over the years. That was number one. Number two was after a stint in business school at Duke in North Carolina, launched my second career in the social impact space. And career number three is where I'm at right now, which is a leadership and career coach.
And those are three very different things, but I'm sure they built on each other.
Yeah.
So did you purposely start in healthcare and on that side, or did you sort of fall into it after undergrad?
Yeah, so I studied economics in undergrad, and I graduated in 2011, which was a time when the job market wasn't great. I hadn't had in mind that I was going to go into healthcare at all, but I liked the idea that my work could impact people's health in a positive way, and the salary was also really hard to turn away.
Yeah.
To be honest, that was a big factor as someone who just graduated college, and so no, it was not at all intentional. And so kind of took the first job that I was offered. And it was very corporate. And so I spent 4 years of my life basically in corporate healthcare in a series of finance and operations roles.
Wow.
Learned a lot. And also it was very much not a fit.
First of all, it's, everybody sort of needs different things at different times, especially coming right out of grad school. Having a solid salary makes a lot of sense. And that's probably something that's really important to folks as they're just starting to get started in their life. And then at different points in your life, other things are important. But I totally understand sort of the corporate feel. I remember I worked for a large consulting firm and I had to wear close to a suit every day. We had to call the head of the company Mr. So-and-so. And I was like, no, that's not me at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember this one specific day. I would wear suits every day, full suits. And I know this is a podcast, so you can't see me. I'm 5'1", so it's really hard to find suits that fit well. There's a lot of tailoring involved. I would wear full suits every day. And I remember my boss gave me a talking to and told me that I wasn't dressing appropriately. And I truly didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
It was vague. There was no sort of like, and here's what you should wear. But full suits, I guess the ones I was wearing were not appropriate. It was being policed in that way, I think is really uncomfortable, particularly as a woman.
Yeah. And so you realized that parts of that were not right for you. Did you enjoy the work itself, or was that not the right fit either?
I will say the big silver lining is that I met my husband in that work.
Yay!
So yeah, that's a big yay. I learned so much. And so much of what I learned is, it's in hindsight so invaluable. I think at the time I had some vague awareness that I was learning, but really it was a lot of, okay, I'm learning Excel, I'm learning operations, I'm learning processes, I'm getting stuff done. But ultimately, when my alarm clock goes off in the morning, I'm praying for a snow day, even if it's August, that kind of feeling, that sort of dread. But yeah, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what I hated, which actually was really critical data. And is advice I give a lot of my clients now about how, information about something that you hate can be just as valuable as something that you love.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that I was talking to another guest with is about saying yes to a lot of things, because even if it ends up being a project that you don't like, you've learned something really valuable, that's something you don't like. And so you won't go down that path again, or you may surprise yourself and you end up liking something you weren't anticipating. But everything is a learning opportunity, even things that don't work out the way you hoped they would.
Yeah, it's such a great point, Karen. And I call that low stakes trial and error. So
Nice.
to the extent that you can try lots of different things and learn and collect data on your energy levels and what that experience is like for you, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And so was there a tipping point that made you go, I really got to make a change. Like, this is not right for me.
Yeah, I think you and I share this view. A lot of times people quit their boss, not the organization.
Hmm.
I feel like I was quitting my boss and the organization. I was just, it was a kind of very male dominated, sort of toxic feel. And I knew I needed a change. And so I just kind of, in the background, was applying to graduate school. I had kind of embarked on this large scale informational interview process, which has been a tool that I've used throughout my life to gain information, sort of talk about low stakes trial and error, right? Talking to people who you admire about what their job is like and what their path was like,
Hmm.
hearing what their voice sounds like when they talk about their job, asking them candidly what they hate and what advice they have, that can be just so valuable. And I think
Yeah.
people often underestimate the value that those conversations can have. And so that conversation process, I mean, I was wanting to getting into the social impact space. That was kind of my goal. And I had some of the most amazing people respond to my cold emails for conversations.
Aw.
Deborah Brooks, who went to business school at Tuck and is Michael J. Fox Foundation, actually
Hmm.
got on the phone with me and had a call with me
Wow.
about business school. And that call was really a turning point for me because it was the moment where I kind of said, okay, I think business school is the right education because I can pursue all of these different paths. Social impact being kind of top of my mind,
Yeah.
but certainly could also pivot should I choose to. And so once I got into Duke, that was kind of my ammunition to march into my boss's office and say, peace.
Yeah. And I'm done.
Yeah, right. I'm out. That kind of quitting fantasy moment, which never goes as planned ever, ever. But yeah.
I call it the Jerry Maguire moment because after that movie, that's all people picture of like, I'm just moving out.
Yes. Yeah, it's so true. And really the reality is never it's never as gratifying.
Yeah. Or you never actually say everything you want to say because you're so nervous or you're so intimidated or whatever.
Yes.
But I think, you're talking about, talking to other people about what they do. I think something that's also very interesting about that is you actually learn what jobs can be. So I think
Mm.
sometimes we have a view of, I don't know, what a product manager does or what an accountant does. And then once you actually talk to people in those roles, you learn so much more about what the role can be and how it can be different in different organizations. So doing something in social justice is going to be different than being an accountant for a bank or, whatever the different industries are.
Yeah, 100%. And particularly for young people, I think it's so important to lean into what you don't know
Mhm.
and to not be afraid of asking dumb questions. I think when I was young, I was so afraid of asking questions. And
Yeah.
really, there was no reason why I would know what the corporate world was like or
Yeah.
why I would know what work was like in that setting. And
Yeah.
I have this one kind of funny anecdote. I had an internship at a major bank, I think after my freshman year of college, and it was one of these internships that I sort of like lucked into through a friend of a friend. It was unpaid, and unbeknownst to me, I was interning with human resources.
Mm.
But on my on my first day, my boss, who was the head of human resources for this bank, was talking to me, and he used the abbreviation HR, and I
Mm.
said, "I'm sorry, what does HR stand for?" I was 19. And
Yeah, of
he just
course.
looked at me like, it stands for human resources, which is where you're interning. It was just this moment of like, oh my God, I'm going to go crawl into a hole and die of embarrassment. But that is all to say, I have two 19-year-old interns with me this summer, and I have said to them, whatever questions pop into your mind,
Yeah.
ask them. Whatever acronyms come up, whatever questions you have, just ask them, because this is
Yeah.
a time to learn and a time to grow. And sure enough, when you create psychological safety with a team, they do ask questions.
Yeah.
They do ask, how do you make money?
Yeah.
How do you get clients? Like, what is that? Those are the right questions, right?
Yeah.
How would you know that?
Yeah.
So I think just like culture of question, a big fan of culture of
Yeah.
questions.
No, I think that's a great point, especially as you're learning upfront, because first of all, you're never going to know if you don't ask. Other
Yep.
people, especially in a group setting, other people probably have the same question, and you're just going to be the courageous one to ask the
Yeah.
question that's on everyone's mind. And it's funny that you tell that HR story because, when I graduated college, maybe because I was on the theater side originally, but I didn't know what HR was. And I don't even think I knew the value it could bring until I was in companies and I saw things that went right or didn't go right. And I said, oh, I could have an impact on that.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I never would have had those opportunities because I didn't even see that side of the world. So you go to Duke, you're in social justice, and you're thinking about things to do on that side. Do you work in the field for a while?
Yeah. So it was a wonderful second career, and by all kind of on paper metrics was experiencing quite a bit of success. It was
Mhm.
I was working in first impact investing and then social impact consulting, and I was working for a New York based social impact consulting firm. I was the director of
Mhm.
the North Carolina branch of that firm. I was managing a team of up to 10 consultants as the director of that market, and that was what I wanted, right? That was like,
Yeah.
I went to business school and I threw myself into the social impact world. My people were the social impact and business people, profit and purpose. And in many ways, I still do sing that tune. And I, I became aware, at maybe a year and a half into that work as director of that consulting firm, um, that something was off about my energy.
Mm.
It was this, I'm chasing something. It was like kind of a carrot at the end of a treadmill. It was eluding me. I wasn't getting the joy that I was seeking from that work. It wasn't
Yeah.
what I thought it would be. It wasn't that, okay, I found it moment. And
Mhm.
I recall actually a specific moment, a specific day when that became really real to me. I was, Karen, like any good manager, I had my weekly check-ins with my team, and those weekly check-ins, consist of both kind of the personal development angle as well as the check-in on projects angle.
Mhm.
And so I just kind of stacked these meetings all in a row. I had my 10 check-in meetings, and I was aware throughout the day that during each meeting, when the conversation switched from personal, professional development to project work, the energy would leave my body,
Yeah.
just
Yes.
leave my body. And I was excited, engaged. My posture was even different when I was talking with my team about, like, what do you want to be 5 years from now? What skills do you want to develop? What are you struggling with? Let's talk about the team dynamics at your placement. Like, how can we like manage difficult personalities, right? Like, those were the
Mhm.
conversations that were energizing me, that I was 100,000% in. It was like I was drinking coffee as I was having these conversations. That's what it
Yeah.
felt like, in my body. And then when we switched to pull up that Excel spreadsheet and track those metrics, I was like, but I'm a business school student. I went to Duke. Like, spreadsheets should jazz me. And really, like, they just weren't. And it
Yeah.
was, when you put those two things so close together timing wise, that contrast is really hard to ignore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I came home that night, and I remember just talking to my husband over dinner and saying, something's off.
Yeah.
This isn't the work that I love with all my being, like I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really lucky. I have a very supportive spouse, and his thing, and then with me, and my thing with him is, I want you to be happy. And if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
not happy, something needs to change. And that's also, a privileged thing too, to be able to make
Mhm.
those choices and have a dual income. But I quit.
Wow.
I quit without having a plan B, which, as a recovering perfectionist and a total type A person, if you told me, 5-10 years ago that I would have done that, I would have called you crazy. It's the antithesis of everything I was
Yeah.
raised with in terms
Yeah.
of security and responsibility. But I quit.
So, and I think you bring up a really good point. And again, I definitely want to recognize that, not everybody has this flexibility, or sometimes they have to do something else in the interim while they're finding the thing that
Yes.
really will make them happy. But at the end of the day, if you are unhappy at work, either, you're dreading getting up and going in the morning, or you realize that at the end of the day, you didn't have the energy for the whole, meeting or everything, it impacts the rest of your life.
Yes.
And again, everybody needs to go through their journey differently, but you shouldn't sort of have to sit there and suffer, even if it's just getting, another job just to cover the meantime.
Yes.
Find something that's going to make you happy, because it impacts your relationships, your health, everything else that's part of your life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's why I love the title of this podcast, Hamster Wheel, because you do sort of feel like you're in this, like, how do you get off?
Yeah.
I'm doing it. It's fine. Like I'm comfortable with the dread that I feel every morning. Maybe dread is just adulting, right? Like so many people kind of rationalize that away. And I want to just kind of scream from the rooftops. Dread is not adulting.
Yeah.
Dread is a signal your body is giving you that there's a misalignment and something isn't right and you need a change.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So against everything that you thought you stood for, you quit a job without a plan B.
Yeah.
How did you then continue the self-reflection and the journey of, so what does this mean? What is next?
Yeah. So I had no idea what was next when I quit. I was just aware of the shift in my body, my energy. And I spent a month writing, reading, reflecting. I was in therapy. I spoke to my dear friends and asked them questions like, what do you think my strengths are? What words do you use to describe me?
That's great.
Yeah, just these really seemingly basic questions that actually hold immense power.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing for me, and I see this so much with my clients, is I was discounting my natural gifts as ordinary because I had always lived with them. And so they seemed commonplace and ordinary to me in my own mind. But to the rest of the world, they were unique and they were gifts and they were things that I could turn into a career. And that's so common, right? To discount the things we're naturally gifted at because, oh, isn't everyone gifted? I mean, that's so easy. That comes so easily to me. Doesn't that? And no, it doesn't come easily to many people. But if it comes easily to you, that's a signal. And so, coming out of this kind of competitive business school environment where there were a couple of types of kind of prescriptive success, I had a lot of ego barriers to overcome in terms of what was, and I'm using quotes, impressive enough, and kind of deconstructing my own definition of the word impressive in the context of my own career.
Wow.
And I was able to move past that pretty quickly because I let joy and energy direct me kind of for the first time. I gave myself permission to let joy kind of captain the ship. And so within a month, I LLC'd my company, The Authenticity Guide, which is my coaching firm. And it is, I've never felt joy like this. I never thought that I could feel joy like this in a career. And, it's still, I kind of have to pinch myself when a check hits the bank account and I'm being paid for my natural gifts, but that's really, that's a beautiful thing and something I think I never really thought I would find for myself.
Yeah. No, and I think it's really interesting what you're talking about, what is impressive or what is right or appropriate. I definitely went through that journey as well. Not on the career side, more on the personal side of I thought I was supposed to be this. I thought I was supposed to be at this stage in my life.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure you put on yourself. And usually you're putting it on yourself. I mean, maybe you've got some people in your family or in your life that kind of yip in your ear, but in general, you're tending to do that to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, it's that dirty word should, right? I should do this. This is impressive. And should reflects something external that has permeated your own ideas of what you want. And there's conflict. Should indicates a conflict. And it can come from anywhere, right? It can come from your nuclear family, from society, from your peer group. But regardless, it's an external idea of what's best for you. And it it doesn't come from inside of you.
Yeah.
And so therefore it doesn't know what's
Yeah.
right for you. Yeah,
Well,
it's harmful.
it is. And I think, you're talking about being impressive, when you follow your passion and follow your joy and follow what you're also really good at, because usually they overlap whether you realize it or not, you
Hmm.
then become wicked impressive because you
Yeah.
are brilliant at what you do. You're passionate. You just radiate this, I've got this and I love what I do. And that comes through so much. Part of the reason why I was, a little bit of a LinkedIn fan of yours was because I could tell you loved what you did. And that resonated with me because I'm very fortunate that I love what I do. And so I think you could naturally connect to those kinds of people. And so you are really impressive because you're doing what you love. You're great at it. And that just oozes from you.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And the LinkedIn fanship is mutual. By the way, we've chatted about that before. Yeah, I love you're what you embody, what I believe HR should be in so many ways, and that's a different podcast. But yeah, and it's interesting that you say that. I had someone approach me for an informational call, informational interview, which I always say yes to those, by the way, because when I was on the other side of that, it was heartbreaking when people wouldn't respond, and so I always say yes. And this woman said to me, you radiate confidence in a way that isn't self-promotional. And I just wonder, like, how do you do that? And my response was, that's so interesting. I am not consciously aware of doing that, but I just think I love what I do so much. And I feel so passionately about it. And for the first time in my life, I know without a doubt that I'm good at it.
Yeah.
And I also don't care about it. It's nice to hear, of course, that that it's impressive, but I hold myself to the standard of breaking up with impressive. If it feels right and I'm enjoying it and I am listening to my body, then that word doesn't matter. And I think you're right that it does sometimes naturally follow that other people see it as impressive, but I'm far more interested in how it feels to me.
Yeah.
And how it feels to other people.
That is incredibly healthy, not a place that everybody gets to in their journey. So what advice do you have for folks that are trying to figure all this out and thinking about what will bring them joy and what, how their passion and skills align? What advice do you have for folks thinking about it right now?
The first thing is pay attention to the signals your body is giving you.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires a focus inward. I have a lot of career clients who are, I want to look for the next job. Can you help me with my resume and my LinkedIn? And I am very clear. I'm sure we will do resume and LinkedIn. That's kind of part of the package deal, but you cannot do this work without first turning inward and paying attention to what energizes you and what drains you, what you feel dread about, what you feel excitement about. And so that's just kind of the first key. The second piece of advice I have is to get a guide. And a guide is not a friend. I cannot stress that enough. A guide is not a friend. And the reason it can't be a friend is because a friendship is a reciprocal relationship where you also have to give. And the other person's needs are just as paramount as your needs in a healthy friendship, right? Whereas with an objective guide, like a therapist, like a coach, that person doesn't have a predetermined idea of what success should look like for you. Your job is not to ask that person questions about their life, right? With my clients, they don't know anything about my personal life, and that's as it should be. It's a space where you're investing in yourself, and it has to be an objective guide. So I think paying attention to your body, investing in an objective guide. And then the third thing I would say is, as much as you can engage in that low stakes trial and error. So I have to tell you, Karen, the thing that I hear the most with clients who approach me is, please don't ask me what my passion is, because I don't know what my passion is. And that is a source of so much pain for people, that they feel like they see everyone around them knowing what their passion is and going after it, or having some awareness. And I want to be the first to say, like, there is no reason why you should innately know what your passion is. You have to try a lot of different things, and it's okay. Give yourself permission to not know what that passion is. And so I say, like, I'm not going to ask you what your passion is. We're going to talk about lots of other things so that we can get indicators and clues and data about how to get in the right direction. And so low stakes trial and error is a great way to get closer to those clues. And so conversations, mentoring, shadowing, listening, learning, reading, internships, mentored studies for students, really just learning, trying different things and paying attention to your body all the while.
Yeah. It's a great point about not knowing and being okay with that. I don't know if it's sort of the Facebook culture, and not to pick on them. I mean, it's any social media platform where the story you put out there is the story you've chosen to share with people.
Right.
And so you scroll through and people are on vacations and they're doing this and they're doing that. And they're like, oh, everybody has their life together and I don't. And that's just not the case. Either that's the story they're telling or that's just a small group of people. And there are millions out there who aren't on Facebook sharing those stories. And I think sometimes that makes people feel more isolated as they're actually trying to come together on a social media platform.
Yeah, it's so true. You know, we're seeing everyone's highlight reel, not their blooper reels.
Yeah.
You know, and so something I've done that's been really healthy for my social media consumption is I follow more people who are willing to be vulnerable and share their blooper reel. And I unfollow people who, you know, just share that highlight reel. I think it can be really harmful.
Yeah.
We're kind of mindlessly scrolling, but it permeates, it gets to us. At an unconscious level that we then internalize. And so, yeah, thoughtful consumption of social media, I would say, is a big one too. And making sure that you're having vulnerable conversations with people, because I think you'll be surprised at how others have just so tempting to just glorify everyone else's journey and no one else, everyone kind of knew and just went for what they wanted. That's not true.
Yeah.
And I think we, you know, need to do a better job of normalizing talking about the journey.
Yes.
And less the destination.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was one of the reasons why I started this podcast. Was I was so impressed by the number of people, especially right now in the world, that are taking this time to self-reflect. And I wanted people to know they weren't alone. So if you're going through that journey, you know, hear Julia's story, hear my story, hear other stories of what we've learned, what we tried, things that didn't work. You know, you tried career number 2 and that wasn't quite the right fit. So now we're on career number 3 and that's okay. Just trying things and getting yourself unstuck is the important part. To your point, the destination will come as you do the work. I am so glad that you were able to join, not just the podcast, but this gave us a great excuse to finally actually meet and chat versus just liking things on LinkedIn or whatever. So best of luck for everything that you're working on. So glad that you have found what brings you real joy. It's so obvious when you talk about it. And in our bio, people will have a link to your LinkedIn so that they can reach out and continue the conversation if they'd like to.
Thank you so much, Karen, for having me. It was a pleasure. And I just have one more offer for your listeners, if that's all right. Yeah. So I was thinking about what I could do for your listeners. And so I have 2 kind of special offers for folks who are listening. The first is that I have an online course. It's called Maximizing Your Potential at Work and in Life. It's normally $99, but for listeners of this podcast, I'm going to make it $20.
Wow.
And the code is hamster wheel.
I love it.
all one word, but yeah, we can share that for your listeners.
Yeah.
And the second offer I have is that I know times are tough and COVID. And so I'm going to give a 10% discount on coaching to all the listeners of the podcast. Just mention your favorite kind of quote from the podcast and that'll kick in your 10% discount for coaching.
That is amazing. Thank you so much. I know people will really appreciate that. So I will make sure, obviously that's in this episode, but I'll also put it in the blurb so people can reference it as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again to Julia for sharing her story of how she got off the hamster wheel and found a career that brings her so much joy. I hope today's conversation helped inspire you. And if it did, please consider subscribing to this podcast, sharing it with others, and leaving a rating and review on the platform of your choice. Until next time, remember there's always a way to get off the hamster wheel.